Hi there, I'm Christina, and welcome to Salty Critics Corner. Today we'll be talking about Chloë Ashby's new novel, Second Self. Who is Chloë Ashby? What is this book about? Is it worth your time? Let's find out. First of all, who is Chloë Ashby? She's an English writer and editor who's written extensively for publications such as The Guardian, FT Life, Apollo Magazine, The Spectator, and really many more. But she's also had her debut novel published a couple years ago. It's called Wet Paint, really interesting. And she's also has some nonfiction books, especially one that really drew my attention. It's called Colors of Art, The World in 80 Palettes. If you're into art, I absolutely recommend it. It's a beautiful book. But back to Second Self. So she recently published Second Self. It's just hot off the press. We were lucky enough, Claudia and I, to be able to go to a book talk about it, where both Chloë Ashby and Jenny Mustard from our previous video were both present, and they were answering some pretty interesting questions about writing these novels. So throughout the video, I'm going to maybe insert a couple interesting bits that they mentioned about the writing process or about some of the themes that were explored in the novel. Chloë Ashby herself has been raised in the middle of England, though now she lives in London. She obviously works quite close to the art world, and she is a 30-something-year-old woman. So the themes that she explores in Second Self are absolutely themes that will resonate with this audience. But let's not waste too much time and let's get going with the book plot. So what is Second Self about? Well, since it's such a new novel and I really don't want to give any spoilers that might put any of you off from reading it, I am just going to use the blurb. So, Cathy and Noah, main characters, they first got together and neither saw children in the future. Then they got married, they've been happily married for the last 8 years. Cathy isn't so sure anymore. Noah's losing his patience, but at the same time, Cathy's widowed mother is in a world of her own, and her best friend is also yearning for another baby. So Cathy feels increasingly under pressure. Escaping into her work in the conservation studios of the National Gallery, she chips away at layers of overpaint on a canvas from a collection. Will the discovery of an unexpected truth help her find the clarity she wants? And yeah, that's about it. That's the plot of Second Self. Like many of the books we recommend here on the channel, really, this book isn't very much about plot. This book is about characters, and it is about the themes that Chloë wanted to explore. So I'm gonna give you a bit more detail about these themes, and we've identified about 4 major ones. First of all, of course, motherhood or being child-free. Fundamentally, this is the central theme of the novel, and it is about making this choice. So really, if you're not into reading about this is genuinely not the novel for you. But if you are interested in seeing what women go through when they have to make this choice, because at the end of the day, for women, it really is a bit more like a biological deadline, whereas men can have children way late into their lives. So here Cathy is, I think, 35. And she is struggling with this decision as she is struggling with how to introduce the idea to her partner Noah, who made it very clear from the beginning of their relationship that children is not something he wants. So for them, it was a deal breaker at the beginning, and her committing to this life is basically committing to him. Now that she wants to really consider her options, he finds it a bit as an attack on their relationship. Then, another really important theme in this novel is, of course, marriage, relationships. And I think it shows a panorama of modern relationships, and it is very relatable. So one thing that I really liked about the characters in this novel is that they're definitely people that you know. So you have a couple different marriages that you get to look at. You've got Noah and Cathy, then you've got Noah's brother, Noah's brother Daniel and his wife Grizz, and they're, I think, 3 or 4 children. Then you have Anna and Caleb, who've had a baby recently, and they're getting ready to have a second one. And then you also have Cathy's parents. So this kind of takes me to the next theme, the mother-daughter relationship. So in the light of all these marriages and some of them having children, some of them not, as well as Cathy's own experience with her parents, with having a really healthy childhood, healthy upbringing, an excellent relationship to both her parents, although slightly preferring her mother. And we get to see how this impacts Cathy, how this impacts their relationship, because of course her mother has been a provider for her whole life. She's been a support. And now Cathy herself has to take on some of these responsibilities herself as her mother grows older and frailer. So this idea that you almost become a parent to your parent, Cathy has to deal with at the same time as making her decision on whether she wants to be a mother herself. And what is the impact that this decision has, of course, on her partner, Noah, but also on her mother to an extent, because if she decides against it, then she feels like she's taking away this experience, the chance to be a grandmother, that she's taking something away from her own mother. So, as you can see, there's all these family dynamics. Because we have all these heavy topics, I think Chloe manages to insert some levity, but just offer a counterpoint through presenting Cathy's activities at work. So, as mentioned in the blurb, Cathy is an art conservator. She works for the National Gallery. Cathy is faced with this new painting that she needs to work on, and it's, I think, 16th or 17th century Dutch art. Honestly, I haven't seen Dutch art or a painting explored so in depth, I think, since I read Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch. So if that's something you like, I wouldn't say this book is like The Goldfinch, but it has a bit of that art angle going on for it as well. So I don't know, maybe you might be interested. But yeah, so art conservation, it's used as a bit of a metaphor for us to kind of process what Cathy is going through with her decision process. You know, she starts to question the decisions that she's made. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think these are the four main themes. So marriage, motherhood, mother-daughter relationship, and art conservation, right? Now, let's go and discuss some of the good bits about it and some of the, not so good bits. Finally, end up with a verdict. Are you going to read this book? Should you read this book? Keep on watching to find out. A few great things about Second Self, Chloë Ashby's new novel. First of all is that this book is a meditation. As mentioned previously, there isn't really that much of a plot to it. I really enjoyed that Ashby bypassed completely that cliche moment where Cathy is just going about her day. Suddenly she has a revelation. Oh my goodness, what if she does actually want children? No. This book goes through her decision process in a much more natural way, and I think a much more relatable way. Sorry, you're probably gonna hear relatable all throughout this review. Please take a shot every time I say it. But this is what the novel is. It was just so easy to read, and I think a lot of people will enjoy this aspect. But yeah, back to the lack of cliches in this novel. So the inner monologue evolves in a very natural, organic way, and you are with Cathy all the way through her journey. Now, this journey and the atmosphere is the next good bit about the book that I wanted to highlight. And it was something that Chloe actually mentioned during the presentation that she gave a couple days ago in Waterstones. And she did say that what she wanted to do is write a very atmospheric novel, but one that is a comfort, one that is easy to read, one that will genuinely be there for you when you come home from maybe a really hard day at work, or maybe you yourself are going through a more difficult phase. This novel is a comfort blanket when it comes to the atmosphere. There are some very romantic scenes in the book. She was absolutely right about it. There's a lot of pasta eating and cooking with your husband or partner and just going on about your day, going to coffee with friends. There's all these activities, mundane activities that follow Cathy as she develops her decision, develops her opinions about what she wants to do with her life and with her choice of having children or not. But the atmosphere is so well calibrated that I honestly thought about it as a bit of a, hot chocolate soft blanket kind of book. And I think she absolutely achieved this, especially when it's dealing with such difficult topics. It's nice to have something to balance out the intensity of these themes with the mundane aspect of a character's life. And really, overall, this is another good point about the book, the fact that it deals with such difficult, intense themes that can have such a big impact on women. But it does all of this without turning it into what I think is very common in the publishing landscape nowadays. And I'm actually going to put it on the screen because I don't want YouTube to take down the video or anything. This especially. So many authors nowadays think that they have to put their characters through the worst imaginable trauma in order for those characters to grow, in order for people to think that they're serious authors. I don't know, please sound off in the comments. But honestly, Chloe really demonstrates that you can have characters simply experiencing day-to-day life and still growing and still being really complex, intense characters that people can enjoy reading about, without making it like the Suffering Olympics or anything like that. So it's something that we discussed during the presentation, and Chloe made some interesting observations, about being taken seriously, especially as a female author, if you are not writing that kind of book. Now, the characters in the book, and like I said a bit earlier, these are some very realistic, relatable characters. Most likely, you definitely know people like the ones presented here. And I think one of the successes Chloe's writing is that these characters feel so real, they feel so natural. There's nothing stilted. I know I mentioned in the review of OK Days how some of the characters there, I felt like they were just going through the motions of the plot. They weren't necessarily making the most natural decisions. They were just following the plot of the book. And of course, that is a debut novel. It's a completely different situation. And not to go on with the presentation, but both Chloe and Jenny have talked about the writing process and how it's quite different. Jenny apparently plans out her novels chapter by chapter, so she knows exactly where the book is going when she starts writing it. Whereas Chloe writes more of an overall synopsis, but she discovers the story at the same time as her characters do. And I think in this situation, it's what helps them feel a lot more natural. So you get these complex characters that are still, again, that word, relatable. And finally, what I think is another really great point about a book is that it doesn't overstay its welcome. So part of the, I'm a serious female author, take me seriously, is this pressure to write really long novels. But I think this one clocks in at about 300 pages in hardcover, and it was the perfect length. So you get to see Cathy, the main character, in a couple different iterations. You get to see how she's dealing with some of these really difficult decisions. But at the same time, it just doesn't overstay its welcome. It's the perfect length. So every plot point is getting its ending. You're getting closure. So again, this is a novel that manages to do that very well without breaking the tension necessarily. But at the same time, letting you explore your own thoughts on the themes. It lets you draw your own conclusions. And it makes you think at the end. How do you feel about Cathy's decision? And now that we have the good bits about the book, let's have a look at the maybe not so good bits. Some recommendations for Second Self. And I'm going to keep this short because I think there are two main things that this book could have done a bit better. So obviously I said this was a good thing about the book, that the atmosphere is so approachable and comfortable, etc., etc. But some people, and I had this conversation with Claudia, might think that such heavy themes are deserving of a heavier novel. And I don't necessarily have an opinion on this specifically, but what I do have an opinion on is the fact that in Second Self, everything is a choice. All the characters always throughout the book have choices. So they're never really forced by things outside of their control to actually make a decision. And you might even say that indecision is a theme of the book. Of course it is. And how modern people approach this idea that we have way too many choices, so we want to never make a choice unless we're being forced to. And really, gut-wrenching, this book is not. And I think, to me, like, that was something that really would have taken it to the next level. What if somebody took away the choice from these characters? My next point, and again, this might be a bit nitpicky, but to me, the writing itself didn't really stand out. Throughout the book, I never really felt the need to underline any sentences, so I wouldn't say the voice of the novel is as distinctive. This is perhaps just not that kind of novel. And I'm not trying to make excuses just because, Chloe was genuinely incredible and very nice to us. These are simply observations, and it's more a matter of taste. I would say this is not the kind of novel that really follows you with its writing. It follows you through the themes that it approaches. It follows you through the characters that you might recognize in your own life. And really, it still makes you think. So yeah, I would say that these are the only sort of more negative observations that we had after reading it. So like I said, it sometimes maybe a bit too light, and the writing itself didn't stand out as much. So yeah, let's sit down and give a verdict. What's the verdict on Second Self by Chloë Ashby? Should you read this novel? Should you just skip it? Where do we stand on it? And frankly, again, to the salty critics, I would say that this is a novel that definitely speaks to a very specific audience. I would say it definitely speaks to women in their late 20s and older than that. It speaks to a sort of, privileged young woman that gets to make these choices, maybe. But at the same time, it is a very easy read. It's a very comfortable read. So if you're looking for something that won't really challenge you that much after a hard day's work, I would say Second Self is a really good novel for that. If you are looking for a more hard-hitting, gut-wrenching, sort of intense novel, perhaps maybe skip this one. So yeah, finally, this is a pretty good book. You won't be wasting your time if you give it a try. It's available in all major bookstores. And again, we wanted to thank Chloe for just being so nice to us at the book presentation. Don't worry, by the way, we still bought the book, so we didn't get this for free. This is still, genuine salty critics review. But yeah, Second Self, pretty good novel, definitely worth your time. And there you have it, Chloë Ashby's Second Self. What did you think? Is this the kind of novel that you usually enjoy? Have you read any of her other books? Maybe this is the book that's going to make your summer. You won't know if you don't read it. And if you do, please leave us a comment down below, subscribe to this channel, like this video, and really, thank you for watching. Hope to see you next time. Stay salty!